The third method to solve a quadratic is by completing the square. Feel free to pause the video at any time to write down these steps. The first step we're going to do is add the constant to the other side, and then we're going to complete the square with what we have left on the left side of the equal sign. In order to complete the square, we're going to take the b value, divide it by 2, and square it. Step 3 is to add that number that we get to complete the square to both sides. Number 4, simplify your trinomial, factor it down. Step 5 is to take the square roots, and step 6 is to solve for x. I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I think when you see me actually working through examples, that it will click and make a lot more sense. So let's go ahead and get started. We have 3 examples that we're going to cover together. So for the first one, it is already set up for us because the constant, which is 21, has been moved over. And what we have left is x squared plus 4x. And we need to complete the square. So in other words, if we take this 4 and you divide it by 2 and square it, what number do you get? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So we're actually going to add 4 to both sides. So we have x squared plus 4x plus, and then on the other side we have our 21. And we're going to add 4 to both sides. And the reason why we did that is because now we have a perfect square. When we factor this down, we get x plus 2 squared. It's a perfect square. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to take the square root. And because we have a perfect square, let me switch colors because you can't really see that. Okay. Because we have a perfect square on the left, that square root and square just cancels out. And the square root of 25 is positive and negative 5. So our 2 solutions we get from solving these 2 equations. If I subtract the 2, I get x equals 3. And if I subtract the 2 here, I get a negative 7. And that is it. Because we had a perfect square for that 25, I know that we probably could have factored it, but I wanted you to see it on an easy way, an easy example, how the process of completing the square would work. So now let's look at question B. I'm going to clear this out, but feel free again to pause at any time. That's the beauty of a flipped classroom. So again, we're going to begin by adding the constant. So we have 4x squared plus 8x, and then we have a 5. So on the left, notice that we have 4x squared. So this 4, we need to divide it out, okay? We're going to divide it out of the left side only. We're not going to do anything with that 5. We're going to leave it alone just where it is. Okay. So this is what I get at that point. So now we need to complete the square. So what number do I need to add to complete the square? So we're going to take our new b value, which is 2. So take 2 divided by 2 and square it, and we get 1. So here's the catch. I am actually adding 4 because we have this 1 is being multiplied by 4. So I'm really adding 4 times 1 because of this 4 that I took out. Or you could say you're adding 1 4 times. Okay, so we get 4. This is going to factor down to x plus 1 squared. That equals 9. Then we're going to divide by 4. That gives us x plus 1 squared equals 9 over 4. And now we're going to take the square root. Okay, so we are left with x plus 1 equals positive or negative 3 over 2. And when you solve that, you can separate it into two equations. You get x equals 1/2 and x equals negative 5/2. All right, in our last example that we're going to cover together to complete the square, we're actually not going to cover that last one, D. We may go over that in our live class. However, we will do additional questions. I'm going to practice one of each in our live class. And also, please feel free to bring your homework and just work through homework questions. We can work through homework questions and practice together. So we're not going to do D. However, I wanted to do C. So let's look at C. And we're going to start off by subtracting the 15. So we have 3x squared minus 24x equals negative 15. We have to divide out that 3. Okay. And then we're going to take that negative 8 divided by 2 and square. We're going to add that 16 to the left. And on the right, we're actually going to add 16 3 times because of that 3. So we have a 3, and we're going to factor this down. And that factors down to x minus 4 squared. And when you put negative 15 plus 3 times 16, you should get 33, a positive 33. We're going to divide both sides by 3. So now we have x minus 4 squared equals 11. And we're going to take the square root of both sides. Now 11 is not a perfect square, so that's even easier when this happens, because we're left with x minus 4 equals positive or negative square root of 11. We're going to add the 4. So our final answer is just going to be x equals positive 4 plus or minus the square root of 11.